Defeat Putin. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
We came, we saw, he died.
We both agree that Assad needs to go.
You know, fuck the EU.
Fala galera, beleza? Todo mundo aí para assistir essa live hoje fantástica, Inteligência Ilimitada com Larry Johnson e comandante Farinazzo. Então, sem mais delongas, vamos trazer o pessoal aqui para a tela se eu não tiver feito tudo errado e estiver funcionando. Beleza, fiz tudo errado, eu tenho só o Farinazzo aqui. Por que eu tenho só o Farinazzo aqui? Ah, sim, já sei por quê. Ok, agora eu tenho Farinazzo e Larry Johnson. How are you doing, Larry? How are you doing, Farinazzo?
I am well. Good. Bom dia, boa tarde.
Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite para quem estiver assistindo a gente de manhã, de tarde ou de noite.
Prazer enorme estar com vocês. Larry, it's a great pleasure to talk to you again. You know you have a great fan club in Brazil and all the countries that speak Portuguese. Portugal and Mozambique.
Very flattered by that.
Yeah, sure. And people always ask, when is Larry coming back to the channel? Well, Larry is a very busy man. He has the judge every week, which, by the way, everybody that follows the channel, go follow the Judge Napolitano channel, excellent channel. Go follow also Larry Johnson channel that he just started a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month, in YouTube, which is former CIA Larry Johnson, right?
Yeah.
And also follow Larry on sonar21.com, which he writes mostly every day. And that's it. And also, of course, follow Farinazzo from Artedaguerra, which is the brother channel for us, always here as well. And all the links on the description, as usual, I put everything there, so everybody goes there. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you see things that you agree or disagree, comment down here. If you don't like, don't put the like button. Don't worry, it's no problem. And well, let's start with it. And don't forget to subscribe to all the channels. That's great. So let's start. Comandante, you want to start the questions, please?
Yes. Primeiro, deixa eu só pedir, pessoal, vamos fazer a inscrição aí no Imprensa Destruição em Massa, que é um canal promissor que a gente está apoiando. A gente quer chegar em 2.500 inscritos hoje. Então, vamos lá, turma do artedaguerra está aqui, vamos seguir. Esses meninos do Imprensa Destruição, eu falo menino porque é o pessoal mais novo que a gente. Esses caras são foda, vocês vão ouvir falar muito dessa turma ainda. Estou falando para vocês. Larry, I want to know the following question. Ukraine is dying.
Yeah.
They have no soldiers, they have no ammunition, they have no air defense, and so. In the other side, we know American congressists are. I don't believe they will send the money to Ukraine. How do you see this perspective to United States funding Ukraine? Do you think the money is going in April?
Well, I think ultimately the money will be approved, but you hit on I think what the issue is. It's not so much funding Ukraine as it's funding the United States defense industry, so the military industrial contractors. Because this is an election year and all members of the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate are going to be up for election, you can guarantee that the money that usually flows from those military industrial corporations to members of Congress needs to be reciprocated. So I don't think it's so much the reality is if 61 billion is approved, that's not going to be a sudden cash infusion into Kiev. Most of it's going to be a cash infusion into Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, BAE systems, etc. So it's a little bit of theater. I think, even if 61, let's just assume that the entire 61 billion was approved and went to Ukraine, it's not going to change the situation. It doesn't, that money will not magically produce new trained military personnel. That is first and foremost the biggest thing that confronts Ukraine right now. And then related to that is having personnel who are trained how to use a Patriot battery, a HIMARS, 155 millimeter howitzer, whether it's the M777 or one of the other variants from Germany or France. So, like I said, this money now, this is all about political gesturing, trying to say, oh yeah, we stood with Ukraine or we didn't stand with Ukraine.
Thank you, Larry.
So yeah, about this situation with Ukraine, how do you see the fate of Zelensky over this? The guy is completely isolated, I would say. He's between what we call in Brazil, between the cross and the sword.
Yeah.
And at this point, I actually see that his best friend could be actually the Putin, not the other way around.
Yeah. Instead of the cross and the sword, I always prefer between the dog and the fire plug. With the fire hydrant where the dog raises its leg. So that's more of the situation that the Zelensky's in. I don't know if he'll get out alive. His political support's not growing. It's decreasing with each week. The fact is that he has postponed elections that were supposed to occur, has brought out even people that previously supported him in opposition to him. I know that one of his senior members of the cabinet, I can't remember if it was an ambassador or former defense minister, but he laid into Zelensky yesterday, just highly critical of him. So I think, Zelensky's in a similar situation to, candidly, what Adolf Hitler was in, where he is indulging with delusions. He said, Hitler was drugged up. Hitler had Parkinson's disease, and he had this crazy doctor that pumped lots of drugs into him. Zelensky is reputed to be a big cocaine user. I think that drug use has affected his judgment.
Yeah, that is a big issue. And so, Farinazzo, please go ahead.
Okay. Larry, in the last weeks, Emmanuel Macron has made a lot of disastrous speech about sending French troops to Ukraine.
Yeah,
we know that the military situation of Ukraine is bad, is horrible. No? I believe that only 200,000 or 300,000 of help from military of Europe, 300,000 men they need or more. Macron, in the other side, can send just about 2,000 men.
Yeah.
What really Macron wants? He doesn't have a lot of men to send to Ukraine. You know this. The French army is little in front the problem of Ukraine. What Macron really wants, in your opinion?
Right.
Talking about drug abuse.
Yeah, it is. The French have a long tradition of wanting to send troops to Russia, and it never turns out well. Okay, so I guess Macron is channeling his inner Napoleon, and you're right. It is. It's a combination of hubris and delusion, because Macron fancies himself as being this leader, this power in Europe, but he's lost so much credibility with a variety of people because he'll say one thing in private and then another thing in public. He has made promises to Putin in the past that he clearly violated, and Putin has made hasn't tried to hide at all his contempt for Macron. So this notion, it looks like the Europeans are increasingly coming to the realization that the United States is not going to have their back, that the United States commitment to NATO is actually in question. And therefore, they're scrambling around trying to figure out how they can coalesce with a military force of some sort to threaten Russia, or to at least you make a show of force to Russia. But here's the problem. There is not a single European country that makes an air defense system that's worth a damn, okay? So they don't have any functioning air defense system to speak of. Their air power, well, I invite them to fly into Ukraine, but they won't be coming back. So it is, they've spent this money on building up military infrastructure that is now ineffective, will be ineffective on the battlefield. So it's just, to me, it's his idea, I guess, of thinking that if he gets into a scrap with the Russians, that somehow the United States would come to his aid. But look, the Russians already killed a bunch, at least 60 French mercenaries, so-called mercenaries. I think they were regular military that had just been, sheep dipped, dressed up in a costume as civilians to go to Ukraine to try to help out with the manpower shortage. So it's just, the good news is Macron he's increasingly unpopular in France. It looks like the military is not backing him with this adventure, and he's receiving pretty stiff criticism from other European leaders.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, still about Macron, just to as you mentioned yesterday or the day before yesterday, there was some news in the Telegraph, if I'm not mistaken, or the BBC itself, where basically Macron and the UK are trying to revive the Entente. And,
I know.
Yeah, that's funny, but at the same time, it's extremely worrying because what looks to me is actually, I mean, I was watching Alexander McCurry and also your analysis at the Judge and everything. And what it looks to me is that they're just they're counting exactly what to say, the United States, coming to save the day. And but then I come to ask, how does the United States see this situation? Because at the same time, it's it's good for United States business. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, Ukraine has really faded from the front pages. Most people, I remember early on when this Russia invaded or launched a special military operation. A lot of people were wearing Ukrainian flags and they had Ukrainian signs in front of their house. That's gone now. They're not paying attention. Politically, it's interesting because there is a sort of across the board, Republican and Democrats alike, this belief that Vladimir Putin is a tyrant. He's an authoritarian dictator intent on conquering the world, and that if we don't stop him in Ukraine, he's going to go on and take over all of Europe and then Africa and then the United States, and by God, we got to stop him. I mean, it's absolute craziness, because what we're living with, and you go back to the French and British Entente, Think about it. From the 17th century through the 18th century, France and Great Britain were two of the dominant powers in the world. Then Germany emerged as well. The United States was not much of a global power back then. And Russia was Russia. I mean, it stayed within its own boundaries. It was not establishing colonial outposts. When you think about it, when you look at both France and England were competing on, how many brown and yellow people could they enslave? Went to Africa, they went to Asia. The French, set up shop in Vietnam in the 1800s. So they're in withdrawal. Part of what we're seeing is England and France going through the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, because they've lost their empires, they've lost their standing in the world. I mean, England's particularly funny because they keep talking like they're a 6 foot 8 inch giant, someone that's more than 2 meters high, that is all full of muscle, bristling muscle and strength. And then when you get to the reality, they're just a skinny little kid that, the combination of being overweight and out of shape. Their army is 70,000 people. Okay, so they couldn't even fill a football stadium in the United States or Brazil for that matter. Their Navy is a joke. The aircraft carriers keep breaking down. They can't even get them out of port. They had that submarine that went out. I think we talked about it last time. I love the line. I love the line I came up with, which was it had ejectile dysfunction. Where they tried to launch the missile, and the missile didn't launch. It sort of launched and plopped out. I'm thinking, it's like instead of the erectile dysfunction ads, which are prevalent here in the United States, this was the British version, sort of a metaphor. Basically that's what Britain has become. It can't get an erection anymore. Okay, yeah. Let's be a little frank about it, and the same with France. So these two midgets. I know Andrei Matianov refers to them as chihuahuas. Yeah. That's really what they've become. They're vicious. I don't know if you've ever owned a Chihuahua dog. The saying is the meaner they are, the longer they'll live. And they're those are some nasty little beasts. They'll bite and harass. But when all's said and done, they can't affect the outcome of the world. All they can do is create some mayhem here and there and create problems.
Yeah, that is true. Commandant, please.
Larry Johnson, this week we had a problem with Elon Musk in Brazil. He's trying to interfere in the affair of the Supreme Court of Brazil. But he's hitting hard in the Brazilian Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Well, you are in the United States. You know Elon Musk. You know the politics. What Musk wants with Brazil? He's allied from Donald Trump. What he wants, really?
I don't know, because the way the story's being presented up here is that it was the Brazilian Supreme Court justice that went after Musk, and then Musk, as his reputation, punched back, and this because he was being, I guess they're threatening him with, shutting down Twitter, X, and he said, "Fine, go ahead and do it." I'd be more curious what your all's take is. I mean, because you're there firsthand seeing it.
You wanna answer that, or should I? Commandant?
Wait,
you wanna answer that? So, ok. A pergunta foi sobre qual a nossa percepção sobre a questão do Musk, do Twitter e do STF. O senhor quer responder essa ou falo eu?
Well, my perception is that Elon Musk is trying to interfere in internal affairs from Brazil, in our politics, in our way of life, and so he is an American. You were American. Huh? I, as a Brazilian, I cannot interfere in your country, and Musk can't interfere in Brazil. He is not even an American. He was born in South Africa.
Yeah, I was going to say he's South African.
This situation is not very good. Brazilians not seeing this very well.
Yeah, this habit of the United States for meddling in the internal affairs of other countries has been, particularly egregious over the last 80 years. I mean, it happened prior to the end of World War II, but it really became intense. It became sort of the hallmark of the United States, and that's why I find it so amusing that there was such an uproar with claiming that the Chinese and the Russians were interfering in the 2016 election and the 2020 election. That that was being used as an excuse. We got to stop that, and yet at the same time, the United States has. I think the Musk platform for Twitter, I don't necessarily anymore as having a clear political agenda, because he has allowed divergent voices on it. Prior to Musk getting control of it, it was definitely a platform that had a political agenda that was being used to promote certain ideas and exclude others. I guess the question I would have with respect to Twitter in Brazil is, are opposition political voices or political voices in support of the government, are those being suppressed by Twitter, or are both being allowed to express themselves?
So, if I may answer that, so I see the political table working about all right in Brazil. I will not say it's perfect. It's not perfect anywhere. But so I was invited to a channel to talk about this, and I had to prepare a little bit at least. I don't know if I'm going, but I have talked with a couple of lawyer friends of mine. So basically, you have a full law system at work. The decision is perfect. I don't know. It's not possible to define that at the moment. Is the decision right? Is the decision wrong? It's difficult to define that. Okay, so but it was investigated. It was investigated by the federal police. It was investigated by the public ministry. I don't know how to translate that in English.
The prosecutor.
The public prosecutor. It was judged and it was decided, and when it's decided, it has to be accomplished. All right, it has to be followed. I mean, anywhere in the world, anyone from any place in the world can answer here in your country. If a Supreme Court decides something and you don't follow, what happens to whoever does not follow the decision? And that's basically, one can question if it's right or if it's wrong. So yesterday I went to a Twitter Spaces from some big Twitter accounts that they actually invited some of these accounts that were suspended. So basically these accounts were, they were real person, but you see that it's a bot engine. If you go to the accounts, you see it's a bot engine supporting President Bolsonaro, okay? The people are real. It doesn't mean that the account is not a bot. I have bots that share your channel, your blog, Commandante's channel, everything I share in my Twitter, in my Telegram channel. I cannot do that every day. But you see the political interference of these accounts. So the thing is that one that has to understand that Brazil does not have a foreign agent law, okay? And if it had, it would be something that probably would be judged in that law, because you can see clearly that those people are, as we discussed some lives ago, foreign agents. They work as foreign agents, right? And so one can question whatever if it's right or wrong. The thing is that the decision is done. And these people were telling, oh, the Supreme Court, they investigate, judge, and execute. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's not how it's working. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, the investigation is done by the investigative bodies. The judgment is done by the judging bodies, and the execution is done by the executive bodies of the system. So legally, the system is working. If it's right or wrong is different. What these people were trying to imply is that it is working as a dictatorship. All right. So this one body is deciding everything and it's dictating its terms. While the contraire, when you see the actions by the freedom of speech paladin, is that what he does is he's used his extremely strong soft power of having the platform to say whatever he wants, as he wants, to investigate, judge, and punish the Supreme Court of Brazil, which is not his country. So actually, his attitudes are going against the sovereignty of Brazil, and hence it's meddling in Brazilian politics and whatever scenario.
Okay. Well, actually, I think we're looking at something. Let's take it beyond Brazil right now.
Okay.
Because what you're seeing in Brazil is not unique to Brazil. In other words, the political process, the legal process has been totally politicized, both in Brazil, in the United States, and around the world. And so we've seen, Brazil sort of a case study of here the current president Lula was arrested, charged, convicted of, fraud, bribery, whatever it was, put in prison, gets out of prison, comes back, wins the election, and then is in the process of trying to put Bolsonaro in prison. And this politicization of the legal process, in theory, at the end of World War II, when the United States talked about this international-based rules, this rule of law, that we were going to do everything according to, we're going to strict laws that everybody would abide by. And so that, number one, we're not going to invade other countries. And so the United States said, oh, that's a rule. But, we overthrew the government of Jacobo Arbenz in Guatemala, Mossadegh in Iran, in Vietnam, let's march down the list. We were supporting, there was, direct support, I'm sure, to the military in Brazil when the military, was in control of the country. You saw just this week where the government of Ecuador stormed the Mexican embassy in Quito. That the embassy had given sanctuary to a former vice president. And so this complete, what we're witnessing, I believe, is a breakdown in the rule of law across the board. We're seeing it in the United States. We're seeing it, I think, in Brazil. We're seeing, look just last week, the United States, the Biden administration started attacking the Modi government in India because they had the audacity be, charging an opposition political party with some criminal activity. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But the Biden administration had no problem trying to tell the Indians what to do, when here is the Biden administration prosecuting Donald Trump on every possible charge that they can bring up. And they've locked away thousands of his supporters. So, that's why I say this is, this conflict between Musk and the Supreme Court in Brazil is just I think it's sort of just one other symptom of what we're witnessing as a breakdown of genuine rule of law. Because, here you have Israel flouting international conventions, committing genocide. And where the body at the United Nations through the Security Council finally comes up with a resolution to call for an immediate ceasefire. And Israel just basically, it's a crude term, but I'll use it. They wipe their ass with it. Yeah, we're not going to abide by it. And it is, when you get to a position that you're seeing that this international structure for having everybody on the same page in terms of law and order, out of that comes chaos. And it's only, I almost think we're really headed towards some sort of global conflict, that it's only going to be out of that conflict that a new world order will actually arise to be in place. One of the ironies is the one country that actually is really more observant of these international laws and takes more of a lawyer's approach to it is Russia, and to a lesser extent China. But the United States certainly picks and chooses what laws it wants to follow and which ones it doesn't.
Yeah, just to make an addendum on that on that comment I made. So the paladin of free speech, by the way, here in Italy, in Europe, for that matter, I cannot access Sputnik, for example. Any tweet from Sputnik, I cannot access. So it's not about free speech; it's about meddling. And his words were, he actually tweeted, this judge should be impeached or removed. That's what he said. Who is this guy to say these words to a country? He's not talking to his brothers or whatever in a bar having beer. He's talking to a country.
Well, you're forgetting the golden rule. You know what the golden rule is, right? Those with the gold get to make the rules. So he's got he's got the most gold.
Exactly. And just to finish that, wow, I forgot what I was going to say.
This is see what Comandante Farinazzo touched off here.
Exactly. Farinazzo, you want to go ahead, since we touch upon Israel, you want to go ahead and ask something about Israel?
Yes, I have a question. Mas primeiro deixa eu só pedir, gente, vamos dar o like, vamos compartilhar, tá? É muito importante que vocês façam a imprensa de destruição em massa crescer aí, tá? Contribuam com o algoritmo, deem o like, compartilha, se inscreve, deixa comentário, puder dar o super sticker ou o super chat, ajuda bastante. Larry,
ganhamos um super sticker aqui hoje. Um aqui no canal e um no Arte da Guerra. Valeu, galera.
É isso aí. Vamos crescer, essa comunidade está crescendo. Larry, do you think Biden is trying to throw Netanyahu behind the bus?
Yeah, the Biden administration is trying to walk. I call the expression is a fine line, but this is more like watching a drunk try to walk out of a bar after 2 bottles of rum trying to get home. It's just staggering, because what's happened is the consensus within the Democratic Party has fractured with respect to Israel. There is a significant number of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans that are quite outraged by Israel's treatment of the Palestinian people. And they are really making their voice heard. Monday night, for example, last night or Sunday night, there was supposed to be the Eid al-Fitr dinner at the White House to close out Ramadan. Muslim leaders refused to attend. So you've got Biden now starting to say things that are viewed as more critical of Israel. So verbally, he's critical. But in terms of the actual policy, hey, yeah, we're sending you more bombs. We're going to send you more missiles. We're sending you more ammunition, more artillery. So there has been no change in the actual policy of support for Israel. The only thing that's shifted is the Biden administration is trying to project an image that it's critical and unhappy with, etc. But it doesn't translate into actual change in policy.
Yep.
Thank you, Larry.
That's exactly how I see as well. So we are running towards 1 hour. There's one question that since we talked about Elon Musk and meddling in Brazil, and you made all the nice parallels, this is one question that I would like to ask maybe to both of you guys. What I actually kind of discussed this with the Comandante the other day, but I would like to understand this. What I see around Brazil right now, it's a full, how's it called? Embrace, that circling Brazil. You see the Equatorian issue, you see Essequibo Guyana issue, the French Guiana Essequibo issue. Recently, the South Cone declared that's going to construct a base in Terra del Fuego at Patagonia in Argentina. We have Paraguay that's been lost some time ago. We have Milei, we have all that, and now we have this in Brazil. So what I see is the Biden administration, I mean the Democrats or whoever's behind the Biden administration, they are too bogged in Ukraine. They are too worried about Ukraine. They're not caring that much about Israel. They're basically, as you just said, trying to distance themselves, although not doing anything to change the situation. And Trump is rising back. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could all this meddling very fast, very suddenly happening in South America, could this be the powers behind Trump or whoever behind the Trump administration already preparing the bed for the arrival of Trump next year?
I don't know. I mean, that's I don't see a coherent strategy. I mean, it's true. There is a stop Trump mentality.
No, what I mean is more or less like this. They are preparing to ditch Ukraine, don't care that much about Israel, and pivot toward Latin America fully.
No, I don't think they're going to pivot towards Latin America. In fact, I think the focus is still on the Middle East, and yeah, they're going to lose Ukraine, and then the question is going to become of what do they do about Europe, because this is going to really create a challenge for the continuation of NATO. It will have exposed NATO as an empty threat, essentially, but you've got this the war rhetoric with respect to Israel and Iran and the whole Middle East. The United States has seen its power there slip away, because part of it is with China and Russia now in partnership, an effective partnership. and Brazil indirectly. There, I hadn't thought about this until you brought it up, but there could be an aspect where, from the national security standpoint of the United States intelligence community, that they've received marching orders to see what they could do to weaken Brazil, to make to weaken Brazil as a part of BRICS, because BRICS is seen as a direct threat now to the U.S. control of the financial order. Up to this point, the dollar as the reserve currency has been number one, and then Brazil has been acting up by daring to, have a financial relationship based upon we're going to exchange, work in local currencies. So I think from that standpoint, Brazil could be a target of intelligence community meddling from the standpoint of the broader strategic picture of, we got to stop BRICS. How do we stop BRICS? How do we attack it? How do we weaken it? How do we create problems for it? So that could be one of the new missions of the CIA, frankly. I do see that as a possibility. But, the tide of history, it's running away from the United States. That's and I don't see a lot that the United States can do to turn it around. It'd be one thing if we domestically had this really robust, vibrant industrial sector, but we don't. I mean, that was 50 years ago. It's gone. It's been shipped overseas. I don't know if you saw Janet Yellen's trip this week to China. Yeah. And, some of the things she was saying to the Chinese are just outrageous. Basically, hey, you need to stop growing and need to stop being so successful because you're hurting us.
Yeah, we made a video this weekend, just Sunday, about exactly that. Basically, what she said was that we're not capable to compete with you. Yeah,
it's like, well, thanks for recognizing reality. This. You're familiar, I'm sure, with Professor John Mearsheimer. He's pretty well known. And he was on, if you saw him on Judge last week, I was really shocked at the last 10 minutes of that show, because he was arguing why we, the United States, need to prevent China from controlling things in its part of the world. Now, I'm saying, I wanted to say, who the hell are we, the United States, to be out telling China what it can and cannot do in its own backyard? Who gave us that right? We've already established that we have the right to tell Brazil and Mexico what to do because you're in our backyard and we're the El Supremo. But it is that mentality. That there is that mentality that still persists, even among people like John Mearsheimer, who I was really surprised to hear him talk like that, but he was sincere in his belief. But what the United States, the West, cannot come to grips with the fact that there are now two countries that are not completely under the thumb of America. And that anybody that dares to try to act independently in the past was smacked down. But that's one of the changes that's happening now as a result of the Russia taking on the West in this proxy war with Ukraine, because it's not just a military conflict. This is a battle, I believe, that's going to the very heart of who's going to run the world. Is the United States getting to call the shots, or is the era of the United States and the colonial empires of Europe coming to an end? I believe it's the latter. And that's why I said we're going to be in for a new kind of world order where no one country gets to dictate to all others.
Yeah, that's I always see that. I also see that. Actually, I saw Jeffrey Sachs also this week, if I'm not mistaken, or last week. He wrote a piece where he basically defined that because we have these all mega trends that China's economy is about to collapse and the housing is about to collapse and the building, and he basically says, well, you know, the house bubble in China, it's basically past. And it hasn't collapsed.
Yeah. In fact, there's a Substack author by the name that goes by the name Simplicius the Thinker.
Yeah.
And he had a pretty solid piece last night regarding China, and basically China has recognized that the Western economic model, the economic model that is dominated in the United Kingdom and in the United States, is what is called financialization. In other words, engaging in selling stocks and bonds and money transactions, where everybody gets to take a percentage of that transaction, but they're not actually making anything. They're not producing anything. They're not making clothes. They're not making shoes. They're not making tables. It's really skewed the economy. Where you look at some of look how much market value, the market cap of Twitter/X, worth billions of dollars. What do they make? All it is just it's a platform for it's like a telephone. People can communicate over it, but it's actually sort of an artificial construct. It's not tangible. You can't pack it up and move it. So what's happening is China is still an economy that's based upon producing things, digging minerals out of the earth, processing those minerals, transforming them into steel and aluminum, and then making machines out of it. Russia, in fact, is, although smaller, much smaller than China, is more advanced industrially, I would argue, than the Chinese, simply because, like right now, China is not able to make its own aircraft. It has to rely upon foreign suppliers in order to build commercial jet airliners for itself. Russia's building its own from soup to nuts. So Russia actually provides some additional leadership in that regard about how to be a real economy in a world of, financial balloons that are waiting to blow up.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point. Do you have? So we are reaching about an hour.
We got about 8-10 minutes.
8-10 minutes. Farinazzo, you want to go for the last one?
Yes. Só pedir, Larry, just a minute to ask the subscription. Okay? Pessoal, vamos dar o like, vamos assinar os 2 canais, vamos se inscrever, botar no Superchat, Clube de... Já tá com clube de canais, Vilas?
Não, acho que não.
Já o YouTube te libera. Então, pessoal, vamos se engajar. Se vocês não se engajarem, as mídias não crescem. Vocês podem ver o seguinte, que a história do Elon Musk está havendo um barulho muito grande do nacionalismo. Isso não acontecia antes. Por que aconteceu? Porque a nossa comunidade está crescendo. Essa aqui é uma grande verdade. Então, vamos continuar. A gente não está lutando só para fazer um canal crescer, não, gente. Está lutando pelo futuro de quem vem por aí, pelo futuro do Brasil. Larry, you went to the blank, the center of the blank. What's your opinion about dollar in this scenario you described it? Does a dollar has a future, in your opinion?
No. Up to this point, the United States has been able to control the world economy because the dollar as the reserve currency was used as the primary means for buying and selling oil. It used to be gold. I think what we're looking at is with Russia and China trying to establish a new, if you will, international currency, that they're going to come up with gold-backed currency. So it's going to make gold, once again, a very important means of transactions in the world. So yeah, I think the debt that the United States has accumulated is enormous. It's acting like Argentina did in the 1970s. Back in the 70s, the Argentines, they had so much, their peso was so strong. They were doing daily, they'd take off from places like Buenos Aires and Córdoba and would fly to Miami and go shopping, and then get back on the plane and fly back to Córdoba and Buenos Aires. That kind of excess is crazy. But at that point, the peso was so strong that they could enjoy that luxury. Well, that's been the situation with the United States and its dollar. It's been overspending and it's overexposed. So I think this is one of the other aspects where BRICS. I hadn't really thought about it until we started talking about it today, but I would fully anticipate that there are plans afoot within the intelligence community that has received tasking to how do we stop BRICS? How do we interfere with BRICS? How do we prevent BRICS from displacing the US dollar as the number one vehicle for commerce in the world? And that's I think will be sort of a backstory to a lot of what we see as current events in the world.
Yeah, I was about to comment on that there is that sentence that says those who control the food controls the people, those who control the energy controls the country, and those who control the money controls the world. Yeah, I just think that the United States don't quite understand what money actually is.
Yeah, well, we've been on top for so long, and it's now over 50 years since we went off the gold standard, and the dollar itself became, let's call it the oil standard. The dollar became the means for buying and selling oil, and all countries, if they wanted to buy and sell oil, had to get in line and use the dollar. But then the United States began using those dollars as ways to apply financial pressure and political pressure to other countries. And, it's a poor parallel, but, every parent that has a teenager runs into this, that when the kid gets to be 17, 18, and then 19, all of a sudden, they don't want to be dependent upon mom and dad anymore. Or at least you hope so. You hope they've gone off to dependent, but there is that struggle in that independence where, it's like, hey, I'm paying the bills around here. I'm going to make the rules. And then, but there comes that moment where the kid says, you know what? Fine, I'll go figure a way to pay for myself. I don't want to have to abide by your rules. And that's what we're faced with on a really global scale right now.
Exactly. Larry, I have to thank you very much again for your presence. It's always a fantastic pleasure having you here in the channel. And Comandante as well, it's also fantastic to have you both here in the channel. Together, it's even better. And let's keep in touch and go for a next subject. I was supposed to talk about the red cow today, but we had more interesting things. Nobody cares about the craziness.
Yeah. Marcelo, just a minute. Larry, it's always a pleasure to hear you. Your intelligence, your experience, you are brilliant.
Well, you're very kind. I'll hire you as my PR agent. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. It's a real pleasure to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larry. And just to the people now, pessoal, vamos dar o like, compartilhar, se inscrever aí nos canais, no Arte da Guerra, no Imprensa Destruição em Massa. Lembrando, tem o canal do Larry Johnson agora no YouTube também, que ele começou um mês atrás, muito legal, onde ele esmiuça um pouco lá do que ele escreve no blog do Sonar 21, tá ali embaixo na descrição também, todos os links aqui na descrição. E até a próxima. A gente se vê. Larry, thank you. See you next time.
Tchau.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Comandante,
Okay.
always a pleasure. Tchau, tchau.
Obrigado,
All right.
gente. Grande abraço.
Bye.